Barely, if you were saying, what would you say?
Yes, exactly. Hello, John. Today we're going to talk about the Lanka massacre, Notre Dame, the fire in Paris, and we're going to talk about a few more things. So off you go.
That's right. Yes. Good morning, Oliver. Lovely morning, thank God. I went from the south to the honeymoon, as the fellow says. Now we're talking about this recent terrible genocide, mass murder of the innocents that occurred in Sri Lanka, which normally was known in my time as Ceylon, but they got their independence, and Sri Lanka. And by the way, they had a lot of kind of a civil war there for a long time with people called Tamil Tigers. The media never seemed to sort of specify what they were, what have you, but the name Tamil Tigers, it seems a dreadful sort of a name to describe any people that might have believed in something, but they had the civil war. So they have democracy in the country, which is a good thing, and it's a Buddhist country in the majority, and then there are Muslims, and then there are Catholics. So in this massacre on Easter Sunday, the most holy day in the calendar of the Catholic faith and of the Christian faith, those people that belong to various denominations, not Catholic, but believe in Jesus Christ and the resurrection of Jesus after being cruelly crucified. So we heard with dread throughout the world, in this country also, this massacre, this senseless, diabolical massacre of Catholics in two cathedrals in Sri Lanka, attending Holy Mass on Easter Sunday, the most sacred day in the Catholic calendar, and to be put to death as our Saviour was put to death on Good Friday by forces of the worst evil that has bestowed the earth for many a day. Nothing to do with looking for independence, but mass murder by Muslim extremists, by all accounts, orchestrated by this diabolical movement that was caused such havoc in Iraq and Syria. These Muslim extremists, and that have caused such havoc throughout the world, in France, in the US, in 9/11, and in Spain and elsewhere. A pity the media are not able to tie up all these atrocities committed by these people and mount campaigns to deal with them and isolate them. It's not right that Catholics going in to celebrate Holy Mass in a democratic country should be cut down as the way they were by suicide bombers. Now, and then the people that were killed in the Protestant church and injured, the hundreds injured. Then there was the people in the hotels there supporting the tourist industry, massacred as they ate their breakfast. Some people very influential in the world, and cut down. One father or husband, his wife, and three of his children destroyed. So nothing but tragedy. So it's been condemned by world leaders throughout the world, and rightly so. And it's now condemned by John Malone of the Christian and Jobs Action Party. But the Irish Catholic in this country of Ireland had a headline there recently: "Why so silent, Leo?" This is Mr. Varicker, the Prime Minister in Taoiseach of this country, who was very quick off the mark when Muslims were killed by a lone gunman in that country of New Zealand. he contacted the Prime Minister and was very emphatic in his condemnation of it, and rightly so. But the strange thing was, with the massacre and the genocide of Catholics and other Christians and people in Sri Lanka, celebrating the most holy day, the Catholics, of Easter Sunday, the resurrection of our Saviour, he had not a word to say or ring any Prime Minister in that country. That was the headline in the Irish Catholic a couple of weeks afterwards. I understand he made some kind of a, whatever he made, but it was too little too late. This man should never be elected Prime Minister or Taoiseach of this country. He doesn't represent the views of Irish people, in my opinion, because of the fact that he's half Indian also. And a lot of his relatives, as far as I see, when he was elected leader, seemed to be all in India. I didn't hear of anyone in Ireland, except his mother. And I didn't hear much about her either. So this is a man that is now embarked on various expenditure costing billions. Children's hospital that's not needed in the worst site in the country, and broadband is not needed. We'll be dealing with that later. Anyways, the next item as regards Sri Lanka and the hundreds injured. We say prayers for their families. Those injured are probably in heaven without a doubt, and for the ones injured, that to make a speedy recovery and be restored to good health, spiritually, mentally and physically, and for their relatives, that they'll have the peace that passeth all understanding, promised by our Saviour. So that's our wish for Sri Lanka, and for their relatives, sisters, fathers, husbands, mothers, whoever still has survived, for those that are done. We're saying prayers for them. Now, there was another event before that that gave sadness to Catholics throughout the world, as the fire in the Notre Dame Cathedral, that famous cathedral in Paris, in which was established nearly 1,000 years ago, and which attracts millions of visitors, upwards of 15 to 20 million visitors per annum. Can you imagine? I can also mention about Notre Dame that years ago I had the privilege, when I was visiting it, and inquiring from the security man as I went in, what time Mass was at. And he said, hold on for a second. And he presented me with a card or a letter, an invitation to attend Mass in the private part where monks are, at 10 o'clock the following morning, or maybe shortly after, but while he was still there. So I went to that Mass, and it was ushered into this private place where there was just the monks and the priest saying the Mass, and the only other one that was there was a diplomat. So I felt very important that it was chosen, and a younger man at the time, to be present. So I have that marvellous memory of Notre Dame, and so have a lot of other people. And I think it has upset the French and perhaps put them to their senses and practice their Catholic faith, which are not. And also when in France at the moment, upwards of 1,000 churches, which the churches are maintained by the state. To have a system in that country, it's not the parishioners that do it, it's the state. So 1,000 of them have been desecrated, and one major one, a kind of a cathedral, set on fire. Now, it seems extraordinary that the French police and intelligence services hasn't arrested people for this. It's a combination, I believe, of Muslim extremists, anti-Catholic bigots, humanists, and various assorted people that are trying to destroy the Catholic faith. So they're destroying, they're desecrating buildings in the most horrible way. 1,000. So Paris, or France now, which a lot of people go there, 93 million upwards, and 40% of them go for spiritual and to visit all these famous churches and all the rest of it in France. So their tourist business is going to go down, because I don't feel like visiting it, and I was very fond of it. If that's the way that they're going on and do nothing about it, because it's a secular society, and to have this abortion and all the rest of it. So there's a price to be paid for introducing all these laws that are not right and they're wrong. And you can't go against nature and go against God and expect that you're not going to suffer. And they are suffering. So that's France. Now,
1,000 churches, John, seems an awful lot.
It is, it's too much, but you see, this is it, it's not been reported, and I think the media, the Western media, the secular anti-Catholic, anti-Christian media, even in this country, that when they don't report something, the people then, a lot of them don't know that these things are happening. Mm-hmm. They're in the dark. In other words, there's an agenda at work, and the only times they hear anything about Catholics is if it's something negative.
Yeah.
They don't hear anything about the persecution of Catholics in umpteen countries in the world, upwards of 100 countries, where they've been persecuted and not allowed to practice their Catholic faith, especially in Muslim countries that have a majority in that country. They can't even have churches in Saudi Arabia and all these miserable places. This is the business of the RTE, and I looked at one RTE news programme there recently when I was unfortunately stuck and couldn't get anything else, and I just had to turn it off. It seemed to me to be a PR exercise for the government. Mr. Varriker was over in Holland, and him and the Prime Minister of that country seemed to spend their time talking at a podium. It was like looking and listening to grass grow. It was that boring. There was 20 minutes of that, and when I turned it off and turned it on again, there was another minister sitting being interviewed about the 3 billion for broadband. We'll be talking about that later, so it was a half an hour of the news was about a PR exercise for the government, and then the rest was about murders and all the rest of it. So you couldn't possibly look at it. Mm-hmm. Now, the next item that occurred, another anti-Catholic item during Lent, was this former Attorney General Michael McDowell and a former Minister for Justice, and then a leader of the Progressive Democrats after Mary Harney, and after Des O'Malley, who was the founder of that. And they had 6 TDs at one stage and were partners in Fianna Fáil governments. So they have disappeared. But he made a programme about the Vatican versus the Republic. And David Quinn in the Irish Catholic did two articles about it, questioning what he was standing for, because he has apparently, because of Humanitae Vitae, which Pope Paul VI brought in to sort of deal with this contraception, and he recommended people should live the Catholic way, which was just as safe as the oils that were used in the pill and all the rest of it. And we know that a lot of women have suffered health problems as a result of what they've used by way of the contraception. And here now we have abortion to try and deal with it, because this epidemic of sexual freedom and or sexual licenses and immoral behaviour has resulted in abortions and children not being wanted. So McDowell, instead of looking at the issue in a broader sense, looked at it in a very narrow sense, and was fundamentally had lost his faith on that basis. So his faith was very weak. From the sound of what David Quinn said, it looked like Michael McDowell wanted to be his own pope. So during Lent, for that sort of a programme to be promoted and then aired on the television is another sort of an item of their anti-Catholic agenda. They had nobody of a good calibre to stand up for the Catholic Church and to sort of refute such nonsense that this man came out with. It's a disgrace. And of course it doesn't stop there. We have one called Madigan, Fine Gael minister, who promoted abortion and professed to be a Catholic. You can't be a Catholic and propose abortion. You need to publicly renounce it.